They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, but for Elias, the soul was something he felt in the vibrations of the wooden floor, the scent of the coming rain, and the ivory keys of his piano. Born into a world of absolute velvet darkness, Elias had never seen a sliver of light. He lived in a solitary cottage on a jagged cliffside where the world ended and the mist began. He was a master of the piano, but he didn't play for crowds. He played for the ghosts of the mountains.
Then came Clara. She was an artist who spent her life chasing the light that Elias had never known. She stumbled upon his cottage one afternoon when a mountain storm forced her to seek shelter. When she heard him play, she didn't just hear music. She saw colors she had never been able to mix on her palette. "There is a shade of gold in your melody," she told him that first day, her voice trembling like a leaf. "It's the color of a sunset that refuses to die." From that moment, their souls became entwined. For 3 years, Clara became his eyes and ears. She didn't just tell him what things looked like, she taught him how they felt. She would lead him to the garden in autumn, place a crisp, dry leaf in his hand, and whisper, "Elias, this crunch, this fading warmth, this is orange." She would press a piece of ice against his cheek and say, "This sharpness, this beautiful sting, this is the white of a winter morning."
But as Elias began to see the world through her words, Clara's own world began to dim. It started with a persistent headache, then a blur that no glasses could fix. The diagnosis was a shadow over their son, an aggressive tumor tangled deep within the delicate nerves of her brain. Clara knew her time was a flickering candle, but her greatest agony wasn't her own death. It was the thought of Elias being left alone in the dark again. In the quiet hours of the night, while Elias slept, Clara began her final masterpiece. She painted in a race against her own vanishing sight. She used every ounce of her remaining strength to paint a portrait of him.
One evening, as they sat on the porch, the air thick with the scent of jasmine, Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. Her voice was a fragile thread. "Elias," she whispered, "if I could give you one thing before I go, I would give you the stars. I want you to see the colors we built together." Elias felt a cold dread settle in his chest. He gripped her hand, his knuckles white. "I don't need the stars, Clara. I have your voice. I have your scent. If I can't see you, I don't want to see anything at all." She didn't answer. She only kissed his ink-stained fingers and cried silently, her tears falling onto his skin, tears he could feel but could not understand. The end was a blur of sterile hospital smells and the rhythmic thumping of machines. Clara went into surgery, but she never intended to come out the same. She had signed the papers weeks ago. She had made a pact with the doctors. If she couldn't stay, her eyes would. The morning the news came, Elias didn't scream. He simply sat in the hospital chair, a hollow shell of a man. They told him her final wish was for him to have the transplant. He refused. He fought. He begged to die with her. But then they gave him her last voice recording.
"Elias, don't let my light go to waste. Use my eyes to finish the stories we started. Look at the world for me. And one day, look at the portrait I made for you. I'll be waiting there."
2 weeks later, the bandages were removed. The pain was sharp, but the light was sharper. For the first time in his life,
Elias saw. He saw the white of the sheets, the green of the trees, the piercing, painful blue of the sky. But he didn't care about the world. He ran back to the cottage on the cliff, his new eyes burning with tears he didn't know how to shed. He burst into her studio. It was covered in dust, smelling of turpentine and her perfume. In the center of the room stood the canvas, covered in a heavy velvet cloth. With a heart that felt like it was shattering, Elias pulled the cloth away.
It was a portrait of him at the piano, bathed in that golden sunset she had described. It was beautiful beyond words, except for one thing: the eyes. She had run out of time. She had lost her sight before she could finish his face. Where his eyes should have been, there were only empty, hollow circles of charcoal, and across the bottom, scrawled in a messy, desperate hand, were the words, "I see you now, forever." Elias collapsed in front of the painting. He looked into a nearby mirror and saw the eyes staring back at him. They were her eyes, the deep chestnut brown he had only ever imagined. The eyes that had once looked at him with so much love were now the only way he could see his own grief.
Elias never played the piano again. He spent the rest of his years standing on that cliff, his eyes wide, staring at the horizon. People would pass by and marvel at the man who seemed to never blink, never turn away from the sun. They didn't know that he wasn't just watching the sunset. He was holding his eyes open, enduring the sting of the wind and the glare of the light, just so the woman living inside his gaze could see the world she had given her life for. He had her eyes, she had his soul, and in the silence of the mountains, the colors were finally complete.